go ahead and just talk into the mic
All
as
right.
if you're talking up to
Okay.
get everybody confused.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? We don't have the mic here, but the mic is for Zoom land. Just wanted to welcome everyone here. We appreciate you guys coming out on this rainy night. We've got coffee, hot chocolate over there. Please help yourselves. We want to thank Stewart's for that donation, and thank the Rodeway Inn here for the folks for donating the space here, letting us use it. Tonight we're going to be talking about the streetscaping, the canopy, and the diagonal parking, as well as just general DRI functions, and what's been cooking with that, what's been going on with that. It's an important subject, and we want everyone's feedback. So we're going to be kind of just taking some notes, passing the mic around, and just seeing if we can have a dialogue among the residents here and business owners and folks that are the stakeholders here. So yeah, without further questions or anything like that, here's Deborah Kaufman, your mayor.
Thank you, everyone. It's great to see everyone here tonight. A little bit larger crowd than I was thinking on this rainy day, so I'm happy you're here. Since we were awarded the grant, the $10 million grant, we've had a lot of discussion going in and out of retailers up and down the street, talking about diagonal parking, talking about canopies. Do we want them? Do we not want them? And then the snowplow or the area that is the bike trail that was going to prevent snowplows from going. So a lot of the renderings that you do when you start a project like this are not the ones you end up with, right? They're just to give a sense of what could be. So I thought that the timing was right to take another look at it, get feedback, get some input, and see what people are thinking at this point in time. And then our next step would be the design stage. So it's a real important meeting tonight to get your thoughts, and Jacob's going to guide you through the process that we have for feedback, and we'll kind of go from there. Dave is recording, so we have Zoom, and I believe archiving this online to make it easy for people to go back. So with that, I'm going to have Chet start from the beginning, from when we received the $10 million check, where was everything, and where we ended up, how many years ago now? 2021? 2021, so we had COVID in the middle of all of that, and then a break. And so we have to kind of chip away at this. It's a big project, so your input is really important. And like I said, this is very informal, so I'm hoping that you'll engage quickly here. Chet?
Thanks, Mayor. So let's see, going back 2021, COVID era, city developed a DRI application. In 2021, there was a delay on the state end with the DRI process. We then ended up resubmitting that application to the state and were awarded in 2021. After the award, it's a long process with the DRI, I think as we've seen in other communities. 2022, we created a local planning commission, the LPC, which was comprised of the mayor, Mayor Blask, and local business owners, building owners on Main Street, and other interested parties throughout the downtown, along with a member of the REDC, the Regional Economic Development Council. So the purpose of that was to take the projects that were captured within the overall DRI application, which was tens of millions of dollars, and trim that down to the most important projects for the community and bring it back down to that $10 million award, and prioritize those projects within the original DRI application. So LPC finished their work. Through that process, Department of State provided $300,000 of that $10 million for their own consultant to take the city's input and develop a strategic investment plan. That strategic investment plan is available on the governor's website, along with our application and all the other background information for the DRI. The strategic investment plan, in the development of that, those consultants put together detailed cost estimates for the projects that comprise that $10 million. There were two projects that we're talking about tonight that ended up being rolled into one, the Main Street, the canopy, and the streetscaping project. In total, those two projects were awarded or allocated $3.27 million out of that $10 million award. 100% reimbursement to the city, although we do have to put the money up to go through the construction and then be reimbursed by the DRI program. So from that point through the LPC, we refined the design, I don't want to say the scoping of the canopy and what the project needed to provide. And that's really where we are at this point. We've gone through that process in 2023 after the strategic investment plan. The city signed the grant agreement with Department of State, so now we have an active grant agreement that we're working under. And our first step is to move through from that schematic design and sort of the hand-waving, I don't want to say, sort of a, I don't want to say a comic design, but a sketch design, right? So comprising the pieces that are in that strategic investment plan. So now we're moving from that point, at some point this coming year, looking towards bringing on a consultant to help us through the next steps of this project. But we need to get input from the public, from residents, from building owners, business owners, as to what we really want to see as this project is developed to the level of construction documents where we'll be ready to build from. So we want to make it from here where it's conceptual to a shovel-ready project, ready to go to bid. So what we have in front of us tonight are conceptual plans, some renderings. Some of them are pretty great. Some start with some great ideas. I think there'll be some good discussion on what people like and what people don't like. I did sort of one more, before we start the discussion, I want to go back to, I'm going to read it so that it's correct, the language in the contract from Department of State so that you have a basis of understanding of what targets we have to hit for the state and kind of where to start this back and forth discussion. So two project components, demolition and removal of the existing canopy, of course, construction of a new canopy and canopy finishes, installation of a roof drainage system connected to the storm sewer, always a good idea, installation of new lighting under the canopy and in front of the canopy, miscellaneous repairs to the existing buildings, sidewalks, and storefronts. Second project component, the improving Main Street streetscaping. We have adjustments to travel lanes on Main Street between Albany and School, conversion of parallel parking, this will be a hot topic, to diagonal parking on the southern side of Main Street. And another topic for discussion, installation of a two-way cycle track along the north side of Main Street from Albany to Ann Street, which was part of a larger plan for the city to tie in the bike trail, the Empire State Trail. And the last one, another good one, which is installation of green infrastructure to manage stormwater and integration of street trees through the Main Street corridor. All good pieces, things to talk about and work off of. And I think, depending on public input, I think that there's an opportunity too for some of these pieces to be molded into what the community wants. So Department of State really wants the community to develop a project which is good for the downtown, but is also answering to the needs of those that live and work there. So
the scope is flexible to a certain extent. I mean, we have to work within the guidelines, but the answer to, do we want a canopy, do we not want a canopy, do we want the bike trail going down Main Street, or can we just paint the pavement instead of putting a barricade up there? So a lot of things like that. And the diagonal parking, there was a study done about that increased it 1.6 vehicles. Is that what it was? Dave, do you recall? 1.4 additional vehicles. So it's hard to visualize, but there was a study done, and that's how they came up with that, and so that more space could be used for streetscaping. And the idea to be able to put some tables out there, some benches and street lights and some really nice landscaping. So all of this will kind of go through, and I will leave it to Chet to begin with. Why don't we start with the canopy, unless anyone has a question right now at this point. Yes, go ahead.
Just wondering, is that 1.4 just on one side of the street, or does that consider taking parking out of both sides of the street? And you're increasing
It was
by
both sides, so it was eliminating the parking on the north side,
Yeah.
having parking only on the south side, and diagonally, when you counted up the slots between the two sides of the streets and you went to one side,
Yeah.
it's 1.4 more parking spots doing that.
For all of Main Street?
For all, well, it was not down to in front of PACA, I think, it was only to Ann Street is what they were counting, because the street
That's right.
narrows there.
Yeah.
And so I don't think diagonal parking was considered for that area.
Dave, you said the south side of Main Street?
Yes. Diagonal parking on the south side of Main Street, you know, the Price Chopper side?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I can
Can continue?
So it sounds like we have some questions, so we'll really just kind of go around the room. Sir, in the back?
Yeah, the pictures seem to show diagonal parking on the north side and where the buildings are as opposed to on the south side where the price drop is.
They do,
And
like,
the related question though is that, and I realize nothing's been painted yet, but if you put it on the south side, then 100% of the drivers have to cross the street. If you put it on the north side, 0% of the drivers have to cross the street. Just seems like something worth considering.
Well, one of the things that was brought up, and the rendering has changed twice by these outside sources. So one time they had them on one side, one time they had them on the other. But one of the concerns of people who have businesses that have large trucks was, where do they park? You know, if you stop all the parking on the, or you have it on the north side, and then they've got to park on the south side. So there was discussion about that, but nothing was in stone at all.
You're going to have to probably take the.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just bring the mic around. Yeah. There you go.
Everybody knows I'm about the money. Talk to me about the money. So you rip off the canopy, the facades that are there. Am I, as a business owner, going to be responsible for making my repairing the damage that is left because you took down the canopy? Am I going to be responsible for anything to do with the sidewalk, redoing the sidewalk? The individual businesses, are we going to be asked to pay for any of this?
I think it was always intended to.
And maybe we'll have, if everyone who has a question, if you guys could just form like just a little line over there perhaps, we could get to everyone.
This, the canopy was a design and an implementation of the cities. The city owns the canopy. So whatever damage was done to installing the canopy would be on the side of the city. So in repairing, if we decided that we didn't want a canopy, then all of that reappointing, the money instead of using it on the canopy would be used to reappoint.
I think Chris's concern is that when they put the canopy in, they put facades, weird kind of like fake stucco facades or fake, various facades on different buildings, which, you know, once you pull the canopy down and replace it with much slimmer, more attractive, honestly,
Yeah.
canopy, who's gonna pick up the facade repairs, really?
All of that would be part of the project. So that would be the city, that would be the DRI project. Make sense?
yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Yes.
If you go to diagonal parking with a bike path, you're not gonna be able to unload trucks, you're gonna drive some businesses out of town.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a consideration.
I think the bike path ought to be on Albany Street, and then you're gonna have room for trucks to unload the businesses. You're not gonna drive businesses been here for years and years out of town. So,
I agree with Bert. I think that Albany Street Albany Street is so wide, and since bicyclists coming into town come off of the bridge, that's the street that could easily handle a bike lane. And it would seem to me that somewhere along there might be a bike parking area where a lot of bicycles could be chained up, and you're only talking about walking, half a block up to Main Street.
I mean, Jane, actually, the
That's
bike
what-
path doesn't make any sense now at all, because without the other connector pieces,
Right.
it's a bike path to nowhere.
Yeah.
It starts somewhere and it ends somewhere, but nothing connects it anymore.
It didn't, when pieces of the 3 mile
3.1
connectivity
mile, yeah.
loop that we were using were thrown away, and from the original plan, it doesn't make any sense. So unless the idea was exactly what you say. We wanted to drive people from the bike trail into town with their bicycles in a safe way, to park and eat, to shop, that sort of thing, connecting all parts of the city up with this connectivity trail. And that was the heart and soul of the downtown revitalization strategy. But when you remove the pieces, then it no longer works. And so Utica is one that takes and just paints the pavement green or whatever color, right? And that's the bike trail. I mean, it's something so simple as that.
Right.
So there's no need for barricades and things. Again, like the renderings that were there with the barricade didn't fit at all. But we had renderings from an Argentinian graphic designer that put goats outside the tunnel down at Canal Place, a whole flock of them, but not a flock of them, but a herd of them. And I thought they were small dogs, but no, they were goats. And so you get what you get, right? But the idea is something that you can kind of visualize the rest of it. But yeah, that barricade was never in anybody's plan.
It makes sense, you're coming across the bridge with the bicycles, and there you turn right on Albany. I mean, I don't understand how you take that piece out, you're destroying the whole thing. You gotta come
Well,
across the bridge.
Different perspective, different administration. And it was the mayor's call to do so at that time.
Well, I think Jane's idea of Albany Street makes sense. And I think parking places for bikes so that the bikers can go up and do business on Main Street sounds like a really practical idea, and it keeps them off of the Main Street. If people are dropping off, doing deliveries and that sort of thing, plus parking on Main, it's a bit much.
Well, we actually had e-mobility stations, one on either end of Main Street, where you could rent a bike or a scooter, you could park there. And then on the other side of the tunnel coming out on Canal Place, and then another one over by the harbor. Those were removed as well. So like I say, we kind of had to jumble it up. Now we're coming back to it, to what the original intent was. And that is to take people from the bike trail. I mean, it was, what, 70,000 one year on the bike trail, riding right past the loop to come into Little Falls and going to Canajahari and not stopping. And it is insane that we weren't enticing them to come in. And so the Empire State Bike Trail that Dave was responsible for with his team and getting that designation for the city was part of all that. So we're putting the pieces back together, but you're absolutely right. Albany Street is wider, and Albany Street is great, but we want to bring them to Main Street. We don't want to make it too hard for them to get to Main Street.
Okay, we got back here. No, it's just for the.
Oh, got you. Two-part question. Is there or will there be a traffic study done, given the concerns about the safety with the streetscaping? And then the second part of this question is, do you foresee, and I guess this is for you, Chet, do you foresee this improving accessibility needs for patrons coming to town or live in town to access storefronts?
Sure. So improving accessibility is certainly will be considered and addressed during the design. you know, one of the possible funding avenues for this project, I'll step back. The DRI, as it's scoped and agreed right now, includes paving on Main Street. We also have other funding that pays for paving. So there are a couple avenues that we can use to fund this overall project. And that would be CHIPS or New York State DOT paving monies. And by using those monies, we are required to address those elements and make those changes if the project is funded by the DOT. Department of State has similar regulations to DOT, so yes. Answer to part two, certainly we would be addressing that.
So in other words, adding to what Chet was saying, there were carve-outs too on the curbs so that wheelchairs and all could get through. And that's one of the things we try to do. There's already some down there, but as we expand. And there was really never a safety concern with the streetscaping. The streetscaping was just part of making it more attractive.
Well, I was asking more about a traffic study overall, and I'm not a technical expert on that, but just, you know, concerns about traffic flow, people parking, emergency vehicles, things like Cisco trucks, et cetera. I assume, and I could be wrong, Chet, but a traffic study would help answer some of those questions or illuminate some of the issues that we might come across. Is that right?
Yeah, it would, and you're right. And that would be done as part of the design process. I guess first scoping out what are the changes that we would like to see on Main Street, and then the second part of that is, are they feasible and safe changes as well? So yes, that would be done as part of the process.
And so just so I'm clear, it sounds like we can use a combination of funding with the DRI and bring in like the CHIPS and the DOT to kind of do it all as we're kind of envisioning. Is that right?
Yeah, and I mean, essentially, yes. I mean, what it would do is allow us to maximize our DRI money.
Through the other.
Because we already get CHIPS money for paving all the time anyway, so
Right.
why not do that and to make our DRI money go a little bit further?
Thank you.
Just raise your hand, guys. I'll get it to everyone, I suppose. I'll try. Yes, sir.
Looking at the drawing here on the right-hand side up here, did I hear you correctly that the idea is to expand the sidewalk a little bit and perhaps encourage people to put tables and whatnot out there, right?
It is an option. It's been discussed and
All right.
considered.
If the parking is done there, the diagonal parking on the north side of the street, what you're going to do is create a safe barrier of parked cars between pedestrians, people having a meal, sitting around and having a drink. If you do the parking on the other side of the street, you have a high-speed street right next to that sidewalk, and you're not protecting that sidewalk. It won't work. People won't sit out there and have a meal with a car zooming right by them 5 to 10 feet away.
Al, there was talk about lowering the speed limit on Main Street with all the streetscaping as well. So
You need to have that physical barrier of
I just wanted to
cars.
throw that out there, that they did talk about that as well.
Thank you.
Just a couple of concerns. First of all, I don't think diagonal parking on Main Street is a good idea. You know, it's not a wide street like Cooperstown, for instance, where you're unlimited with your creativity of parking. There's a reason they did parking like this 100 years ago and didn't make it diagonal then. And it's worked fine as long as I've been driving. Wondering if there will still, with diagonal on whichever side, one, both, whatever, will there still be 2 lanes of traffic down the middle of the street? That's one concern, because of, like other people have mentioned, with trucks unloading and whatever, and cars are not gonna wait. The other, anybody that's ever backed out of a driveway and got hit by a car knows that you get the ticket for unsafe backing. So if you're backing out of a diagonal spot, and it's one of those snowy winter days where you can't see, or you have a big truck next to you, you back out and somebody hits you, are you gonna be in the wrong? I'd like the police chief's input on that.
As far as diagonal parking, it would change the design, we wouldn't have as much space, or we, if we go back to the parallel parking, right? We wouldn't have as much space for the streetscaping, is my understanding. But a design could be created that way, and that's why we're here tonight, just to kind of flush it out to see. They did do this study, and it was a state study, and so I don't doubt that they could get more vehicles that way. However, if it's not conducive to the lifestyle that we have, then we would want to change it in a way that it was. So your input is great. I think that the concern I have is with the delivery trucks. Parking the way they do right now, they stop in front of the vehicles, right? And they unload and they load. The problem is that when this came up early on, the solution was, well, those delivery trucks can just park on 2nd Street or Mary Street and, take the cart and walk all the way down to wherever the restaurant is. So I think that that's a bit inconvenient, and it would be a little bit more of a challenge for deliveries than what someone might think. So this is something we want to really walk through carefully with the diagonal parking. But the initial design did have it, and the idea was to be able to get more vehicles on the street there.
I would like to hear the police chiefs that put out a note, with the number of cars backing out every day. The safety.
Well, I'll get back to you on that. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight.
Fire trucks too. Gotta get the fire trucks down there too.
I don't mean to start an argument or speak counter, but on the flip side, I would like to point out, because at first I didn't like the idea of south side parking, but that being said, it does leave the north side open for deliveries at all times without having to worry about eliminating parking in general. And with regards to the gentleman's comment about the roads being designed with a certain way and people backing out, concerns about the police chief, I'm not sure exactly what kind of solution we can come up with that would absolve drivers from having any liability for a failure to drive safely and be able to look over their shoulder and pull out. In a day where cars that are about 10 years or newer have access to rear-facing cameras, and frankly, even before then, it's the driver's responsibility to be able to look over their shoulder and drive safely. I think it's worth that sacrifice to then introduce a bike lane so that parents with kids coming across town, not going to nowhere actually, going ideally right down past the alpacas over here, down to that bridge, and then to go to a state-recognized trail where people will come in as well is not nowhere. That's not nowhere. That is the rest of the state coming here and us going there. And I would like to add a little anecdotal thing. The only reason I'm here today is because Ned Leckie, a gentleman who owned a building down there in Canal Place, was riding across the state and saw this beautiful city and then decided to ride in. So I'm really excited about this bike lane thing. It's really tricky and a shame that Albany Street has become it is more ideal. It's got more space, less traffic, but we do have to figure out a way to get them to Main Street too. So, because that's really the cherry on top. Thank you. I'll shut up now.
The bike lane to nowhere was in regards to the fact that the other pieces weren't there, and so it's sitting by itself. It's not part of that study anymore. And one of the most dangerous parts of doing what you just said is getting over the 167 bridge.
Agreed.
And they are totally like something's got to be done about that.
That's for sure. Yeah. But problems are solvable and problems are inevitable.
I'm guessing that without the study in front of you, it's probably hard to answer this question, but I was just wondering if you have a general idea of the study that says, the 1.4 spaces. Do you know how tight those spaces were? Like, is a Ford F-150 fitting in those spaces, or is it smaller cars? Because that matters, and that kind of fits how many spaces you're getting is how wide you make them.
Jack can answer this. Essentially, it's state codes that dictate every space that were designed for parking has to be a certain measurement. So, but you can elaborate.
Yeah, without going back to confirm, I would assume that the architects considered standard spacing, but I can check that out for you.
So just an aside on that, I think we've all been to towns where they weren't wide enough, even if it's state codes. I do think you got to measure there. I'm on the block where people come from 2nd Street, and even with parallel parking, they come around that corner so fast that I would really think it would be dangerous backing out into Main Street from diagonal parking. As I understood the plan, we had to go to diagonal parking because we were putting a barrier on Main Street, parking on my side of the street. But now, since we're going to put the bike trails to be no barriers, just painted on the street, on the side, do we still need diagonal parking?
Well, you lose the parking on the south side, just paint it.
No, on Albany Street, painted on Albany Street.
So one of the renderings that showed diagonal parking also did show a barricade on a bike lane, but like I said earlier on, the renderings are very conceptual and something to look at that shows the overall intent as you're going for a grant application or for grant funding. So very high level. Some other renderings don't show that barricade. One of the discussions with the architects really early on was that the diagonal parking actually encourages slower traffic movement through the corridor because of drivers acting safer, because it creates a little bit more of a tenuous situation to maneuver your vehicle, and that creates a natural slowing of traffic. Drive through Cooperstown Main Street and you'll feel it. It's a very wide street, but
yeah, and I'm curious to see like what their answers to these questions would be. Like, does that happen there? Do they have more accidents? How do their, because it's kind of similar. Like, there is no back to the actual businesses on the street. There's like alleyways and such, but there's really not.
Yeah, I think their street seems wider to me than
It is.
it is a little.
It is, yes, it is. But I think they have just about everything there that's in these plans. That's why I'm saying, like, I think it's very similar to what this is, what these plans are. So I'd be curious to find out, like, how they feel. I mean, over years, they have so much tourism there. You would think if there was issues with accidents that they probably would have changed this. They can afford to do something like that there. They're a little bit different in a position than we are. I would imagine they would change it if it was a bad thing. I don't think they'd leave it if it was causing problems.
So everybody can really parallel park perfectly here, right? Have you ever actually watched out there? I watched somebody come in, spend 5 minutes, and hit the car in front of them and the car behind them, run into both. So we're assuming that everybody's perfect at parallel parking too. So that's not true.
Got a comment here?
Yeah, to follow up on Andy's comments and Chris's comments, if we go with parallel parking on the south side, on the north side, the bicycle trail with a barrier, is there room for deliveries by trucks and a lane around the truck in that construction? No, Dave, there's not.
And the other
So-
problem with the barriers was snow.
Snow, exactly. So are we saying that that is pretty much off the table? Okay, so that's off the table. And then the other thing about parallel parking. I'm much more in favor of parallel parking than diagonal parking. I have more difficult time with diagonal parking than I do with parallel parking. I'm an older gentleman who is somewhat fixed with some body parts, and I don't have the flexibility to look around that's needed with pulling in front ways on diagonal parking and then pulling out. I am always very concerned about that, and occasionally have some close calls. So I would just, and a lot of our residents are my age or older, so I just point that out.
Respectfully, if I could just say, well, first, is the intent on the south side that we would maintain the sidewalk, or would that be removed so that you could widen this space for both parking, traffic, et cetera? And before you answer that, respectfully, I think it's important that these projects encompass all demographics of our community. And I raised the accessibility question primarily for our older demographics that can age in place and remain in our community, but we also really very much need population growth. And that means bringing in families, younger families, first-time home buyers, kids, and we want to attract them and keep them here. So while how do we design projects that allow for all of those people?
Well, the downtown environment was always meant to be a little edgy, something that would attract youth to want to stay there, to want to, use the apartments above downtown and to get more housing down there with regard to young people, young professionals, people who just want to hang out near coffee shops, entertainment, things to do. So that, when you bring in that kind of an entertainment, food, that sort of thing, and a place to hang out, it attracts the young people. We have a lot of young people who have moved in recently, young families. We just don't have a lot for them to do. And so Main Street is one of those things that I think with the, if you look at European cities, and Little Falls always reminded me of a German European village, right? Where people go for coffee and they're there and they hang out and they go from one place to the other, they meet their friends. We don't have that right now. We did at one point, we had a lot of bars on Main Street. We don't have that now. And so we don't have that culture of going and hanging out, spending a lot of time on Main Street. And I think we could, the width of the current sidewalks and all of that, with streetscaping would be completely changed based on what we're trying to do there. And the idea was to put more greenery, to have little park-like pockets here and there, so that you'd want to linger and meet your friends down there. So it all comes together, but we've got to also consider if we want more people moving in, we have to give them something to do. And I think Main Street offers that opportunity for us.
In answer to your question, which was about the sidewalk, we never talked about changing the width or that sidewalk on the south side at all. Correct?
But it is a potential option, though.
Yeah, but we didn't talk about doing that, no.
Because it seems that's a pretty big sidewalk on the south
That's
side
a good,
there.
that's nice and wide, it's a good one.
Okay. Anyone else? Chris?
Timing-wise, do you have a deadline when you have to have spent the $10 million or it goes away?
We do. We have 5 years from signing. I signed the contract January of '24. So we have 5 years.
And they give extensions. If you're in the middle of a project, they don't say your 5 years is up, stop.
Me again.
Had several extensions. And I don't know of other communities, but I know that they did.
I was just curious along the way, is any of this planning, I didn't hear anything about charging stations, rapid charging stations. I know it's a big initiative, and recently I've actually seen live some individuals driving across state. We were going to Buffalo, and they said, can I stop here to charge? There was only the one down at Canal Place, and then we wound up going to the rest stop. Now that's 15 minutes that we could have stopped and gotten a coffee somewhere nearby on Main Street. So just was wondering if that's a part of that.
Yeah, we looked at that. We actually had a grant, I think, that we were looking at for out in front of a city hall at one point in time. I don't know what happened to those before I got in, but it's always a consideration.
Fingers crossed. And just the last piece, is it, I heard someone mentioning getting rid of the sidewalk on the south side. I got to admit, the more I thought about it, especially with nothing in the CVS or in that parking lot, that whole south sidewalk is minus a very narrow pathway that I'm sure could still be there. That sidewalk is doing almost nothing for anybody.
Well, the idea is to make it more attractive and to be able to sit and just enjoy, the environment there, where you have more greenery, you have a nice bench to sit on, and maybe a little table, just different things that we could do to make it a little bit more interesting than just concrete.
So we're keeping the south sidewalk, is what you're saying?
Well, it's going to be wrapped up in whatever design the streetscaping would have. So I would imagine we would have some kind of a walkway there. I can imagine we would. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that, to Mike's point and Jordy's point, the design, the width of the sidewalk is something that should be discussed during that process, depending on the layout of the streetscaping as a whole, like kind of the holistic approach to what's happening on Main Street. You know, for instance, the brick paver design along that existing south side sidewalk is a really poor design, tough to maintain, in relatively poor shape now. And the state, as a standard design detail, is going away from the individual brick pavers and the sand bed design because of that longevity, the longevity concerns and the maintenance concerns of that treatment. So, to me, in my super quick opinion, even that couple of foot space along that south sidewalk could be lost to no ill effect, right? So it's something I would want to consider and talk about during the design.
Well, as a kind of idea, moving that sidewalk space from the south side, which again is really just kind of like, all right, maybe we can imagine people sitting down there. We could move that stretch to the north side and make more room for tables, more room for deliveries or offloading or whatever, and give it to the shops that could use it more than,
So they're done with Shoppers Square forever? That's getting torn down, no things ever going in there again?
Oh.
No, Shoppers Square is alive and kicking.
So they probably want to keep a sidewalk.
Yeah, the owner of Shoppers Square has a couple of tenants he's working with right now that are national tenants, so we'll see. But he's also looking at housing for a portion of that, market rate housing. So we'll see where that goes, but he has plans for it and is very committed to Little Falls. So I believe that's going to be enhanced significantly.
Who ended up with the microphones? Al's
Jane,
all right.
Jane had her hand up, and then we'll come to the back there.
We have the
We'll get the mic there, because I can't hear.
Yep, sorry. In Canal Place, and they really are not very satisfactory. They've buckled in places and they've sunk in places, and really they're a hazard. So that's been my experience with that design of sidewalk.
Jane, you're holding the microphone out here like it's a tree, like you're the Statue of Liberty. It's supposed to be near your mouth.
Well, you could all hear me. It's just.
Oh, there's a guy in the back. Excuse me.
More than 2/3 of the comments, questions have referred to basically they're automobile oriented. In a downtown, the interests of pedestrians and the interests of automobiles are essentially incompatible. The more you make something work for automobiles, the less it's going to work for pedestrians. The more you make it work for pedestrians, the less you can't do both. I want to propose that we need to think of Main Street as for people first. And that's where we need to balance. We can't do both. We're not going to satisfy all these elements. Little Falls is unique and beautiful precisely because what we have here is what's left of a walkable community. And that's unique. And that's what we really have, that's what we have here. And I think above all, that's where we need to be concerned with.
No parking on Main and two-way on Albany? Is that what you're saying, Al?
I'm saying it's a matter of balance and degree, and that the huge majority of this discussion is automobile oriented rather than people oriented. I'm not proposing anything specific, but I'm saying I hope we can keep that in mind that what we have here is a pedestrian community. There's any number of places you can take your car.
Jacob, that guy back there has had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it back there.
Nick is hiding in the back.
Yes, I'm in the shadows. So I just wanted to point out that today alone, with parallel parking on both sides of the street, the fire chief, with his lights and siren going, had to wait about 25 seconds, 30 seconds for a flatbed truck to move out of the way so then he can go around. In an emergency situation, every second does matter. So if we can get that situation handled, that'd be great. Personally, I'm for a bike path on Main Street. I think it would help every single business. And if we had 70,000 people coming through Little Falls and missing the city, even if 10% of them stopped and spent $10 each, that's an extra 70 grand going to any business in town. And then whether it's diagonal parking or parallel parking, as long as there's room for emergency vehicles to get through no matter the situation, I think that's a big thing. Because again, the fire chief had to wait 25 seconds today with his sirens and lights going when every second counts in an emergency situation. So, but I'm all for the bike path on Main Street, as long as we figure out the situation.
And Chris touched on this briefly, and Al spoke about it, and it was something I was thinking too, is that we're talking everything about cars. And I think one of the big problems that we have in downtown is the rate of speed at which cars go down Main Street, and it's insane. And I think anything that we have, any plans that we have to make Little Falls more, to make the downtown more accessible, to make it more enjoyable for people, anything we can do that's more orientated towards pedestrians and especially to slowing cars down on Main Street would be fantastic.
Chet, can you tell us a little bit more about the roof drainage system? And I think you mentioned something sewer related, because all of this has major implications, I think, for aging infrastructure, both building and underground. So can you talk about that?
Sure. So the DRI contract, as I read it in the beginning here, does specifically state, interestingly, new roof drainage connected to storm drain system, which does have, to me, has a benefit of tying in the grant funding to possibly upgrading our storm sewer underneath Main Street. And that's something we'll certainly need to look at. I don't want to go too in the weeds, but I think everybody can recognize that storms are more intense. We may not have more rainfall in a year, but the way that that rainfall is distributed is more of a shorter span, intense rainfall. So we would want to look at capacity of the storm drainage on Main Street. Certainly have Cemetery Creek and a couple creeks that run under Main Street there, and another one coming from Garden Street, 2nd Street, that need to be looked at and considered upgrading as part of an overall restoration of Main Street. That's the stuff people don't see that also it's not the fun stuff that also.
But those two things are integrated essentially. The rooftop drainage and then the storm sewer, they're connected, correct?
Yes.
And so similar to how we could potentially use the CHIPS and DOT money, is there other funding available to kind of maximize DRI funding for this very important infrastructure needs that make all of this possible?
So yeah, if you go to the storm sewer side and drainage, the GIGP, the Green Innovation Grant Program, is another really good source of funding that we could use to sort of piggyback on top of DRI and CHIPS. That does address storm drainage and also the reduction of runoff through green infrastructure practices. So street trees and ways to infiltrate storm water rather than have it run off. So, yep, that's another pot of funding.
Janet, did you have a question that we?
Oh, I had raised it.
Okay. I'd like to go on a transition, if everyone's willing, to the canopy.
I had just one quick comment that I wanted to make. I think, in addition to this gentleman's comment about the walkability of the city, something else to keep in mind in any design should be some of how this redesign is going to impact events that we do. Cheese Festival, Canal Days, things like that. Those are big influxes of people to the city, and if any redesign would negatively impact those, that could impact how successful those events are. So just keeping that in mind too in the design phase.
One last thing. I think a survey of the businesses ought to be done. You get the input from the business owners on whether they have walk-in traffic, drive-in traffic. I know if I go to Bob Poland's, I want to be able to pull up in front of his place, load and paint my car. I don't want to, I'm not going to be walking down the street carrying it. So whether you're a service-oriented business or a restaurant, walk-up traffic, drive-up traffic, the input from the business owners should be considered on that. I know in my store, probably 95% of traffic that we get is people pulling up in front of the store.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, in the design, I think those are very valid points. I remember going to Boulder, Colorado, and they changed to a completely kind of a walkable streetscape. The road was used as pedestrian walking back and forth with streetscaping. And what they did is on either end of the street, they had where you could pull up and park. So you weren't really walking very far to get to a store or to a restaurant. And it was elegantly done. There are a lot of different things we can do, but getting the kind of feedback that you all have had tonight on the parallel parking will make it easier for Chet and the architect to look at what can we do here that would be interesting. So I think it's all good. And I want to make sure that we have time to talk about the canopy, because that's the other big thing. Whether we have a canopy, whether we don't have a canopy, we have 1920s beautiful Victorian architecture.
And with the architecture, we want something that if we're going to go with a canopy, in my mind, we should have something that relates to that time period. And if we're not going to go with the canopy, which is not original to the buildings, we want to repair the buildings from removing the canopy. And I understand from some of the DPW guys, they were saying, well, the way we put that up, we're going to have some repairs to do. But there are a couple, I think if you look at some old postcards too, when I was growing up, both sides of the streets had the buildings on them, the tall buildings, and they had the rollout awnings. They didn't have a canopy, and the beauty of that was you were able to see the businesses from just the street or walking by. With the canopies, there's such a shadow there, you don't really know exactly what's there unless you live here, right? But if you're just driving through, you're visiting, you wouldn't notice some of the shops that we have here. So it's consideration. So like maybe we can get some viewpoints about the canopy. Anyone have a thought?
Chris, I know you would.
Yeah, of course I would. Bob Polick has one of the rollouts, okay? What's their lifespan? What's it gonna cost for the business owners to have it? I just assumed that was a given, that we were gonna have a not period perfect canopy.
Well,
Nicer than what we have, but not try to go back.
Since the city has taken ownership of the canopy thing, I mean, it would be more than likely something that we would perhaps, if we went that direction with an awning, we would purchase the first awning.
Yes, first one, but look at the repair of the
That's a
current canopy
consideration.
and think of the lifespan of the canvas versus something like what you're picturing.
You can see some of the other designs where there is a canopy that is, I think, a glass top or a plexi.
A glass is right here.
Okay. Is another concept that is a little bit more elegant than the kind of Western look that we've been living with. The Western look just doesn't fit the time period. And we have such a beautiful Main Street and it's well preserved. I'd love to be able to showcase that better instead of hiding it. So different ideas. So I'm curious what you all think.
Any other thoughts on the canopy?
I'll give a thought.
Sure.
Okay.
It's a tough one. I mean, historically, it would be wonderful to go back. On the other hand, our clients love the canopy. I mean, our clients love it. It provides shade, it provides protection from the weather, throughout half the year. Just as a purely practical matter, I will say our clients love it. So there you go.
Also, as someone that worked on Main Street and in the wintertime particularly, visited some of the businesses on Main Street, I felt comfortable doing it in the winter because of the canopy. If there wasn't a canopy, I wouldn't have taken the chance when there was, snow, ice, things like that.
So when was canopy put in? Was it in the 80s?
70s.
70s? Okay.
I had some folks back here. I'll get right to you just a second. There you
I've had 10 years of my business on Main Street. The canopy does represent something beneficial to the businesses during snowstorms and rain. It makes it much easier for the clients to access our businesses. I've been through snowstorm where the snowdrift blocks my entry door, and I've had to shovel a horrendous snow. That's with the canopy. Without the canopy, I don't want to imagine what it would entail to us business owners to shovel the snow and get the business ready for us to open for our clients.
Yeah. The actual maintenance of that, our little plow that we use, can't get inside there very easily. And so if the canopy wasn't there, they would be able to plow that like they do the other streets. But it's definitely a consideration. Nobody likes to shovel. We're getting ready for a lot of it.
So I'm currently opening up a bookstore cafe on Main Street, and I love the canopy. I grew up here in Little Falls my entire life. So I think of Little Falls, I think of the canopy as one of the number one things. And I saw in one of your renderings up there how if we built a new canopy, we could possibly have seating on top of it and, build things all around that. And as for a cafe, I think that's genius. I think it would be great for the community to be able to do things like I believe you mentioned you can see the water from the top of the canopy. Like incorporating things like that would be awesome. No canopy, I feel like you're really stripping what has become Little Falls out of it. But, you think at places like in Saratoga where they don't have a canopy, but some of them have awnings, and other ones have double-decking seating. They built a deck to have seating above, and the places that have the seating on top get traction way more than the places that have awnings.
Yeah.
So.
It reminds me of being able to use those upper levels. And in the original plan, we had fire exits also to make it more usable so that it would encourage the building owners to lease out and turn their upper levels into lofts for housing. So we ended up with 65,000 square feet of additional housing with the fire escapes. But I always looked at it from a perspective of New Orleans, and anytime you're down there, you see so many of the restaurants have upper level seating for the restaurants, or during Mardi Gras, they're sitting out there and having wine and watching the parades and things like that. There's a lot of opportunity to consider when it comes to the canopy or not canopy. But it should do more for us, I think, than what we currently have.
I guess also going back to Andy McAvoy's point about talking to the business people, this is a prime example of something that they should have input on.
Well,
and we have some people here, we have some business owners today that have shared information on that, but I think that should be talked with them, particularly about this subject.
Yep, I think that's great. And that's the point of tonight, as you mentioned, that we get as many people interested.
Participation isn't the best, isn't ideal.
Yeah, well, the Zoom, we're archiving this, right, Dave?
Yeah.
So people can listen to it also. And Jacob is up and down the street all the time.
I walked up and down Main Street for a little while, and I made a recent round to invite all businesses that were open that I could get to. I invited them to come down and place things in their wall to invite all you guys out here. So, yeah.
Great.
And I do think the canopy is inviting for people, because if someone comes to one store and it's not ideal weather, if they see that they have that canopy, they're more likely to stay and wander, which could bring them to other businesses on the street. So,
good point.
My wife and I walk a lot, and I would note that with a canopy, as a general rule, it's always walkable in the winter. Without a canopy, you would have a mixed bag of which businesses have shoveled their walk and which have not, all right? You're going to have, it's like when you walk in the streets in town during the winter time. Many times you're forced to walk in the middle of the road because people just don't shovel the sidewalk. You'd hate to have to see that all the time as far as which store didn't shovel. You got to walk out in the street and back in again. So I think the canopies continuing is a good idea.
We see that on the south sidewalk right now. The banks don't shovel the ones that are
I think that just reading the community's input, we all agree that the current canopy needs to be taken down. I think most people want a canopy versus a modern canopy versus a historical no canopy. I think that is pretty clear if you were to try to survey. So I don't think you should spend so much time trying to decide between no canopy or leave what we have open. It's really just that middle option I think most people support.
Chris, everything that we thought about when we originally wrote the DRI was the New Orleans style canopy with wrought iron railing and the fire escapes. That was the initial plan. That was the original plan. There was never talk about taking it out and putting roll up, awnings and things. Yeah.
So this kind of piggybacks on that, and I hope I'm not opening up a whole can of worms. I remember when I was in high school, they changed the bank clock, and I was outraged. Looking back now, I'm like, why that bank clock was hideous, and the one that we have now actually fits much better. So the question about design and the look and the feel that we're trying to go for Main Street is important, and I'm wondering down the road, or if it's of consideration, how entities like Preserve Our Past, in collaboration with the city, do we maintain this look and feel of Main Street, and what does that mean design-wise for the canopy? To your point, Mayor Kaufman, about preserving the architecture, the look, the design and feel, how do we make it all blend?
Jordan, I think that would be a good question for maybe Jane Ritz to answer. But hang on, Jane. Let's wait for the mic.
Speak into the microphone, I really. I can tell you what it is visually, that when you look at the canopy, it is unsatisfactory or unattractive. And it is because you are looking at Victorian buildings which have had a pseudo-Greek canopy stuck on the front of it. It is non-conforming architecturally. So that I think perhaps in that case, and David, you may know, is that a Victorian type of ironwork, perhaps?
I believe that's what Gavin had in mind with that design.
Mm-hmm. I think when Gavin Maloney did the rendering of his building that was in the paper, I think probably most of you saw that years ago.
Jane, you put it right down by your chin.
We just, if you want to have a canopy, that's fine, but it should be sympathetic and complementary to the style of the buildings that are up above. And I had an experience one day when I went to visit a friend on the 8th floor of Rockton Plaza. She had a big window facing this main street. I wish you all could go up there and look out at the upper 2 stories of our main street. It's gorgeous. Every building is Victorian. And when you're up there, you're not seeing that lower whole level that really is so non-conforming. So if you want the canopy and you want it still you want to have a beautiful town to match the wonderful landscape, the wonderful place we live in, it should be Victorian. And I would question the 1920 date. The buildings in Canal Place are maybe 1850.
Really?
Early.
So maybe Main Street, some of Main
Might
Street.
be earlier. It's classic
Probably
Victorian.
earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, most of the buildings on Main Street are like 1870s, 1890s.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of renovations done in the 20s and the 30s, so.
That was kind of the boom
So
area.
it's a
Yeah,
moving
boom
target.
time.
I guess I just have a story to tell, to follow up on the bank clock story. I was caught in the middle of that when there was a takeover. If you recall, there was an electric clock there that swirled around, and the discussion was between renewing that, doing a new one, or doing what we have now. And we went after discussions with, I think Jane was involved in it, I know the Vincents were, and we went with what we have now. And of course, the mayor didn't like that. He was on the other side. So the other thing I want to say is, you can't please everyone in these decisions that have to be made. That's it. It's just a moral, maybe.
Thank you, Kip. Anyone else? Tim?
A quick
I'll be right with
I think, from where I am, I can only really see that one rendering with the glass top, but from what I see, it looks like there's signage on the front of it. Is that correct?
There is, and I'm hoping that in a few minutes, everybody can get up and walk around to look at these, and we have Post-it notes, so you can put some notes and just stick them onto the boards, so we can get your feedback.
I was just going to say, I do like that idea as a way of negating the effect of the canopy on being able to see what businesses are there. I think that's if it's done well, it could be a very elegant solution to allowing people to see what businesses exist without having to go underneath to do that.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I think that's a pretty rendering.
I like the idea of turning the canopy into a porch. I think that way you'd be utilizing the next floor up, and if I was a building owner, I would like something that you could walk out on year-round and serve cocktails or whatever you want to do. We should double duty this thing to a porch.
And not to interject too much, but is that something, I had a question earlier where someone was asking, can that be, I suppose, structural, Chat, like where the roof or the top of that, like if we were to do glass, like can you speak a little bit about that, as someone had a question about that earlier? Like if we were to do the glass there, can that be something that folks can go out and sit on, or what does that look like?
Sure, yeah, the glass top could be made structural so that you could treat it as a second story. In any direction, I think to someone else had said earlier today, every problem is solvable. And I really think for the snow loads that we have here too, versus the small addition for having an occupied space where people could be on, it's not a huge design change. So.
I have a practical grant administration question, not related to design, and then I'm done. Maybe.
Yeah, I believe that.
You don't believe that?
I swear. I promise. So the downtown, there's a few pieces of the Main Street components of DRI. The $600,000, I believe, is being administered by Urban Renewal. Is that correct? Have other projects, the Main Street, the canopy project, the streetscaping, has there been a change in that now Urban Renewal is sponsoring part of this, or how does this work exactly?
So Urban Renewal is hired by the city to administer the $600,000 grant that's underway and doing really well. I intend to hire them again to help us with the larger DRIs. They do a great job. Jacob does, got a wonderful board that works with him, and it helps to keep urban renewal alive and kicking, honestly. It brings a little bit of money in. It's not a huge amount of money, but it does it allow us to keep urban renewal open. And I think it's a viable organization that has a lot of potential with blighted homes and 1,000 other things that we have in mind. So that's the way it happens. We also hire consulting firms. On the $600,000, we've been working with CT Mail. They do a great job. We work with other consulting firms that help pull it together on different projects that we use. So, there's a variety of different groups that we work with depending on the project.
And then last, given our fiscal situation, what is the path forward? If this is a 100% reimbursable grant, what is the path forward for getting this project done via consultants or whatever the next phases are? How are we going to do this given our debt position and the fiscal situation?
Yeah, the only way we're able to is to take small bites at this, okay? We have the assets and the ability to borrow. What we don't have is the ability to pay back, okay? So we are going to, Chet and I were talking about this earlier, that we're going to chip away at this, and it's going to take us a little bit longer, but we'll get it done. And the first chip away is going to be the design phase and getting it really tight where we know what we want. And then we'll take the next phase and then the next phase. And if we can chip some money to do the road instead of DRI money, little things like that really make a difference and help us. But even if it is 100% reimbursable, the reality is that by the time the project starts and ends, you're talking about multiple years. And you're waiting multiple years to get reimbursed for the whole thing. So there's no way in the world, given our current situation, I could take 3.2 million out right now and say, I can just hold for 2 years to get reimbursed. It's not possible. So we're just going to do what we can handle, but we're going in that direction. And so I think it's encouraging. We wanted to get started, and this is the first step to getting some good feedback, and I think we have tonight, and looking at what can we do. So we can't do everything all at once, but we can at least get the design done so that we can go to the next level, and then get the bids out and start, really chipping away at it. So we'll get it done. But I want to make sure it's something we absolutely love and that we're so proud of. We have such a unique Main Street. People love it, and part of it is that a lot of our architecture is in good shape compared to other places that have been torn down. And I still wish that the left side of the street was still there, the south side of the street. It was absolutely beautiful when I was growing up, and I miss it. What we ended up with is nothing close to what we had. So these have to be thoughtful decisions as we start designing the next chapter. But good question. Anything else?
Any other folks? Anyone who hasn't spoken yet?
I'd like to say one thing.
Sure.
Because I didn't hear it tonight. And I talk about it a lot. And that is, it's a very hard thing to consider, to explain to someone what the intrinsic value of beauty is. And to say, well, why did Canajoharie do what they did? Why did they spend that money in that tiny little town? I don't know if you've not been through, but go down to Canajoharie and walk up and down. It's beautiful. It's historic. They told the business owners what colors they had to paint and choose from. They were picky. But that intrinsic value means that I can't see it, I can't touch it, I can't taste it, but I can feel it. And there is a good example. That one little row in Canal Place, you can feel it. Yeah, so you feel the top part in Little Falls on Main Street. How do you make sure you feel all of it? That's my point.
Cal. Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
I just want to comment that I feel like the canopy is iconic of Little Falls, even though I kick it sometimes because it's in such terrible shape. And I'm with Jane. I would love to see it be compatible and make it beautiful. Otherwise, we look like every other town. So I hope we can capitalize on what it looks like and what it could really be if it was integrated. Another comment, because some of you know I'm a horticulturist, for landscaping. The landscaping would be better off on the south side of Main Street where there's more sun. And if you want to know which trees, just ask.
And no snodgrass or whatever it is.
I've got the gentleman in the back there.
So the canopy's gonna light up bright. Like at night, I think we were saying underneath it'll provide that light like it currently does. What I think might be a pretty cool idea, and granted could be perceived as wrong, but it would be really cool for all the business signs if it was all digital and uniform, in my opinion, so that way when you're walking Main Street or on the south side, even though that walkway might not be there, to be able to see the signs lit up, and then also the buildings, be able to point a skylight from the canopy, whether it's purple or whatever, to give like a nice effect, like how the Adirondack Bank building does in Utica. Maybe point something up to the buildings that's purple, so that way when you're driving into Little Falls, you get that nice, beautiful effect of all the buildings, all of Main Street lit up. Just an idea. I know it adds yearly expenses and expenses to the canopy, but something to make the business signs all uniform, stand out at night, and then also when you're coming into Little Falls, seeing all the buildings lit up might be a cool little feature for Little Falls to stand out.
Okay, I think the combination of the neon and the vintage, the Victorian, might not be a good blend, but I think the idea of lighting and signage really needs to be worked on, and I think we could do something that would be attractive in a way that would blend a little bit better with the architecture. But certainly is an interesting idea. Could we go ahead, Jacob, and get people's viewpoint on some of the renderings we have?
Certainly. So you'll have Post-it notes on your tables there. If everyone wanted to just come up, just kind of shuffle through here, grab some Post-it notes and just kind of affix any thoughts that you might have. We've got this all recorded here, thanks to Dave here. But if everyone could just, sort of line, go through and just kind of put some thoughts. If you have any strong feelings, comments, concerns with these, if you could just jot them down and put them on the boards there.
We've got some pens up here and some more Post-it notes, and so anything that I like it, I don't like it, what you like about it, that sort of thing would be helpful. And if you would stick your note onto the image if you're talking about a particular image, and that way we'll be able to capture it.
And make sure all the coffee is done. Grab the coffee, grab hot chocolate.
I mean,
Some of them are a little precarious.
well, on the top of the piece, maybe, I don't want it to be too busy. But I think there's a way.
I feel like it would probably, I know, that's why I was thinking that.
Hey Dave, how are you?
In the long run, I feel like
It's nice. Go there and get lunch.
Somebody had a good idea.